Religion plays a big role in lives of humans and always has. We discussed some of how shamanism and religion evolved over time in our course on climate and human evolution. But in the context of climate change, we discussed a little bit of this under the course Drawdown, where we looked at the pan-religion committees set up under a project at Yale and so on. This report that just came out from the National Association of Evangelicals is something I decided to also include here because they are a very powerful group in terms of their political participation and deciding the outcomes of elections based on what the candidates stand for in terms of what they believe in from the religious aspect, the Bible. So this report's titled Loving the Least of These, Addressing a Changing Environment. They have a lot of discussions on science of climate change. I will show an example of climate impact on poverty that they quote from the Global Change Research Group's report. Here, love God, care for creation. So we have to accept that science and religion often look at things differently, but in the context of climate change and its impacts and climate action, we have to deal with these differences in a way that we save the environment and the poor from climate impacts, for example. One of the best places to start is with Jesus' summary of the Old Testament. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on to these two commandments. This is in Matthew 22, 36 to 40. For evangelicals, loving God means spending time in worship and prayer. This is foundational. And there is another way to express our love for God. Jesus tells us, if you love me, keep my commands, right? So very straight from the book. And there is a couple of real world examples given of how pastors have been involved in climate action. This is from the Vineyard in Columbus. Jenny Rice, pastor of community outreach at Vineyard Columbus, leads a stewardship program at the growing multi-campus church. So this debate about whether we need to be the stewards of the environment or just exploit what the Lord gives has been debated elsewhere, but here this is about stewardship. 3 prongs define the church's focus on creation care. Okay, this terminology is very valuable to them. The theological understanding of God as creator and humans as God's image bearers. The practical value of energy and cost reducing actions and outdoor activities. The value of outreach to their community. Vineyard Columbus has divided into creation care with an interest group, book reading, better purchasing of energy and water efficient goods, and a community garden. The garden is near the church's food pantry, which is another way the church lives with and cares for its neighbors. So it's real climate action at their own scale. They had a meeting where this document came out, the Cape Town Commitment, which also recognizes that our care of creation affects our witness to the world. Very religious words. The document states, the earth is created, sustained, and redeemed by Christ. We cannot claim to love God while abusing what belongs to Christ by right of creation, redemption, and inheritance as well. We care for the earth and responsibly use its abundant resources, not according to the rationale of the secular world, but for the Lord's sake. If Jesus is Lord of all the truth, of all the earth, we cannot separate our relationship to Christ from how we act in relation to the earth. So this is bringing in environmentalism into Bible. For to proclaim the gospel that says Jesus is Lord is to proclaim the gospel that includes the earth, since Christ's lordship is over Christ's lordship is over all creation. Creation care is thus a gospel issue within the lordship of Christ. Okay, so They also suggest various things like avoid polarizing voices, don't look for good information from angry people who call others names and refer to conspiracy theories. Listen to those who are careful with their words, a biblical characteristic shown in James 1:19-20. So these words, considering the report just came out, we have to wonder whether this refers to or alludes to a person who has been dominating some of the activities in the US where evangelicals had thrown their support behind before. Listen. Look to official joint statements from the professional societies. For example, the nation's top scientists in the National Academies of Science and other professional societies represent the conclusions of tens of thousands of scientists. Several of these societies have already been noted, so they list the societies. So they are within the religious realm with the Bible and its words, but they are also saying listen to the scientists and don't be listening to people who cook up things. Get to know a scientist. Very useful advice. Get to know local scientists who are Christians. Let them help you sort through the scientific information in the media. Are there scientists in your church? Ask for advice. Of course, no scientist understands all scientific questions. Fair enough. Scientists also don't have a single point of view, but they can help you understand why there is uncertainty and show you where to find unbiased information, not agenda driven. Scientific uncertainty is not same as bias. Sometimes people, including scientists, talk outside their areas of expertise. Very common for climate scientists who do very narrow research just in physical climate, for example, and use their voice to talk about things they are not necessarily experts in, which are often socio-economic justice issues. Know the difference between an expert in the area in which you are asking a question and a person with a general interest. Okay? This is from Tom Ackerman, who was a well-known scientist at the University of Washington, and he writes this in this report. He's quoted in this report. I have never felt a dissonance between these two aspects of my life, the study of the world and of God's Word. So many scientists have a religious life, so they can do science, physics, everything, but they do believe in God. And even if you believe in Big Bang, you still have a question of what happened before Big Bang, or as Stephen Hawking jokes, what was God doing before Big Bang? And he says St. Augustine could say he was busy preparing hell for people who ask those questions. So science doesn't necessarily answer all the questions yet. Through them both I see God. Among my most treasured theological truths are the providence of God and common grace. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Matthew 5:45. God gives talents to all people, and among these talents is intellectual ability. So if you assume your intellectual ability itself is a gift from God, over the years I have learned much about my discipline from those who do not believe in God. Does their belief in God taint their physical science? For the most part, I think not. For the most part. To think otherwise is to deny the grace of God operating in our world. So it's a scientist who's saying these things. The report also includes specific items like this from scientific reports looking at impacts of impacts on people in poverty from climate change. So considers disasters, health, costs of adaptation, costs of mitigation, conflicts and displacements. And I'm not going to read through these because we have done this elsewhere in the physical climate science discussions. We have looked through IPCC reports and so on. But in this context, it's good that they are taking science directly from reports, from scientists, from societies, and putting them in the context of how to incorporate creation care in discipleship. Sorry. In your individual life, bring care of creation to the Lord in prayer, in thanksgiving, and with intercession for God's world and for those most affected by its changes. like the poor people. Use your knowledge of and concern about environmental concerns as you share the good news with those around you. In Bible study groups, learn about creation care and its biblical foundations. Worship God with songs and prayers that reflect His might in creating the world. In your church, make sure your Sunday school programs, outreach activities, and sermons include theology of creation care. John 13:35 says, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. In that spirit, support those in your congregation and your community who are most affected by our rapidly changing environment. And then it goes on to say support certain NGOs like CARE and so on. Okay? To quote again another section in the report, there are multiple reasons to work across the political aisle on climate action, including that both sides promote solutions from their point of view. This is important because often in the bi-party system of US, the partisanship can be too strong and can make any action impossible. For example, the Conservation Coalition, TCC, the largest political conservative environmental group in the United States, produced the Market Environmentalism Academy, an educational platform hosting a series of short courses about pro-market solutions to the environmental problems. The Evangelical Environmental Network connects pro-life concerns with the environmental problems and advances solutions that defend the health of children as well as life at all stages. US is of course now battling with this abortion issue after the Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court in the last few months and so on, but this is focused on climate change, so let's not get into the other details. And in the conclusion, they say how they came about to write this report. It was a deep desire to follow the direction of Matthew 25, to care for the least of these, that prompted the National Association of Evangelicals to study the potential impact of environmental change on poverty. As evangelicals, we look to the Bible for guidance in all areas of life. While the Bible does not tell us specifically how to respond to a changing environment, it does give us several helpful principles. Care for creation, love our neighbors, and witness to the world. These principles inform our study and provide a basis for our action. And there are a list of actions provided as well, which were similar to the ones we have discussed elsewhere. So, without any religious implications, I'm just saying that evangelicals in the US have started paying serious attention to this. There are, of course, players like Catherine Hayhoe who are involved in the activities on the religious side, coming from the climate science side. So all these matter because no matter how religious or a-religious or atheists and agnostics we may be, climate change needs that we act together. So such reports sway a lot of minds and can play an important role in support for bills that advance climate action from both sides of the aisle, which is very critical at this time when political situation is a little bit tense. Okay.